Hello everyone, it's Infinity Gamer here, and I'm going to be talking about some February releases from Corvus Belli. Straight off the top, let's jump into the Kestrel expansion pack. This chestnut here, it's a really cool pack. What we're going to look at here is the points that come in the pack. We're going to look at what actually comes in here, and if there are any units that are essential for your collection of Kestrel. First up, we're looking at a pack here that's valued at between 29 and 47 points, depending on the loadouts you take. There's 3 core models in here, the Magistrate. We've got 2 Jackals. The Jackals are slightly different loadouts, but this actually represents a really good value purchase if you are going to be playing Kestrel, because these are units that are fairly core to how Kestrel plays. Let's have a look at this. So the model in here that we have for the Magistrate is the heavy pistol and the stun pistol. Now that's a fairly generic loadout, so it could be anything between 17 and 25 points. I'm going to give the full points ranges anyway, even when we do have a model that's very specific, because Infinity's proxy rules are so generous that you can take this model and play it as any Magistrate. You don't actually need to worry about WYSIWYG and collecting them all. This one can be any of the profiles, so it is nice. Now the Magistrate is a profile that I really quite like in Kestrel. Got the biometric visor, which if you're unfamiliar with the rules, it ignores surprise attack from impersonators and hollow echo if you have line of fire to your attacker. It then ignores surprise attack in CC even without line of fire. So biometric visor is quite a cool piece of kit if you're worried about being snuck up on and being outmaneuvered in that way. It has counterintelligence on all of the profiles, which I really like. It's an FT Master for Jackals. Now, the Jackals aren't regular, so you don't get to benefit from the new rule set around FT Master that got updated, I think about a week or 2 ago. So you don't get that +2 buff for your coherency tests, but still well worth having. Immune to shock, it's special operative. I like to lean, when I have been theory drafting Kestrel, because I have yet to actually play them, on the 21-point chain of command, counterintelligence, plus the FT Master, with the Jackals turning their irregular orders into regular orders, is a very powerful triple combination. It's very low cost, which I've obviously already mentioned, is that this whole set is between 29 and 47 points. So you could take all 3 of these for as little as 10 points a model, which I think is incredibly good value. Then we've got the Jackal with submachine gun, very cool model. I'm not going to give away how much I like these because ratings are going to be a new thing that are coming into my review videos. Now, Jackals, they've got no abilities. The SMG version is a 6-point mini. They've got no real abilities. They're super cheap cheerleaders. That's the role that Jackals have, but they do have a special trick up their sleeve, which makes them super annoying and better than just cheerleaders. And that's so they can be a pain in ARO. The profile specifically so is the Panzerfaust option. Now that, while the BS is relatively bad in this, Panzerfaust isn't something that a tag or remote or heavy infantry really wants to be taking in ARO. The trade-off can be very bad. All the things that can be hitting you in the same distances that a Panzerfaust can be are not going to want to die from something like a Panzerfaust. And all it takes is a lucky hit, and then all of a sudden, now this is a Harris or Harry, if you listen to some of the other channels, which means that you're getting that special dice even in ARO, which does mean the chance of that Panzerfaust going through and causing some damage is a little bit higher than the 6 points actually gives. Their booty can also make them epic or not. As it stands, you obviously build your strategy on the fact that they're not going to get anything good and use what you have available. The other Jackal is the rocket launcher version, which is also 6 points. One of the Jackal profiles I do quite like actually doesn't sit within this FT Master Harris setup, and that's the 11-point infiltrating mine layer. I still think for the points, at 11 points, I think it could be a really good roadblock. We have a couple of other things in there that are very annoying, like that good against heavy infantry, vehicles, tags, because it's got the EM grenade launcher, which when you're looking at an 11-point trade to try and take out a tag or a heavy infantry, I think that could be quite annoying for a lot of people. So the Jackals I've got a lot of time for. This set I have a lot of time for because it's everything that I need to be playing my Kestrel force properly with the real models. Let's have a look at some mini ratings, shall we? Looking at the Magistrate, there's 2 options shown in Army Builder. So this one is the slightly newer release for the Magistrate. This is by far the better one in my opinion. The pose is dynamic, the model itself looks unique. You're not going to mistake it for anything else in Infinity, which I love. It's super thematic. That's why the Magistrate is getting an 8 out of 10 for me for the model. What about the Jackals though? How do they stack up? They're great for cheap troops. I like it when a cheap troop actually looks quite good, especially one when these models, for me at least, are probably going to be in every single one of my lists. So I like it when I've got a cool model to put down. I don't like it when I've got a model that makes it into every single list because it's a good unit, but the model doesn't stack up to how great that unit is. This sculpt is great for something that's basically a cheap troop. Nice to see close to real loadouts here. You can see that they've got like Panzerfaust. One of them's got like a Panzerfaust type thing strapped to its back, which I think is quite cool. The Merc look on them is really nice. It does look as though they've effectively just stopped for work, pulled down their boiler suits, wrapped them around, and then just gone, you know what, I'm going to go fight today. 7 out of 10 for me. I'm kicking off with some strong ratings here. Don't worry, not everything this month gets such high loadouts, but I've got a huge amount of time for the aesthetic of this Kestrel set, as well as what it actually brings to my Kestrel army. So a real good buy, and one that I highly rate if you are collecting Kestrel. The next one, Shindenbutai, expansion pack beta. So both of these are the beta expansion packs. This set, slightly higher in the points value, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these are better units. We're looking at between 46 and 52 points with everything that's in the box here. These are also pretty core units that I've taken in every game I've played of Shindenbutai. So also very useful for the Shindenbutai player. But what do you get in the box? We've got a Kyojin killer hacker with heavy flamethrower. That's sitting at 15 points for that actual unit. It's got some really cool attributes, which is why it ends up being in most of my Shindenbutai lists. We've got camo single use, which I think is a great way to null deploy a little bit. CC attack +1 burst. I've yet to get them into CC, but it's nice to know that if I did, and if I could get 2 of them, I could get potentially more. I haven't checked to see if the +1 burst for having a friendly in fire would also stack with the +1 burst that's in there. Forward deployment 8 inches is annoying for a roadblock. Mimetism -3, stealth, super jump, surprise attack -3, and terrain total. These are actually very mobile and versatile for the points cost at 15. I think this is actually some quite good units. And heavy flamethrower. Nice to be able to get that when you're forward deploying 8 inches, when you're doing it in camo. The chance for you to actually get really close to your opponent and heavy flamethrower, or give them a really bad ARO option. If you manage to get into CC with an opponent, they don't have a great option as an ARO. They could dodge, which would give them a chance against the CC attack, but wouldn't really help against the heavy flamethrower, but wouldn't help against the CC attack. So you've got loads of options with these Kyojin killers if you manage to get them into the sorts of distances where they're going to be lethal, which I think is very possible. The second option there is the Kyojin killer with the DACCW. Now this one actually, because they all have, or both of the profiles have DACCW, this can actually be a generic one that can fit into anything, which I do quite like in these sets, to basically go, hey look, that's a nothing. An experienced player might look at a model and go, that's got an HMG, but this doesn't have an HMG, and that might throw them. So with something like this, it doesn't have anything apart from the core weapons, the DACCW, and so that could be either the 15-point version or the 18-point version. You could play this either very easily. I prefer the 15-point version with the Flammenspiel for the same reason that I like the Jackals with the Panzerfaust. It's a horrible ARO option for a relatively cheap unit that can come out of camo and make your opponent have a very bad option for their second short skill if you're in reactive turn. Then we've got the Yamabushi Paramedic with the tactical bow. This is a 16-point unit if you're taking it as it is. But if you're looking at the generic Yamabushi options, there are 2 FTO versions, of which this is one. I prefer the camo single-use Panzerfaust. You're noticing a pattern with my playstyle. This has forward deployment 4 inches, mimetism -3, martial arts 3, dogged, 6-2 movement. Also playable in Kestrel. So you might be looking at this set. Probably not. You probably would have already gotten the Sandtrap limited edition Yamabushi if you're going to be playing that in Kestrel. But let's have a look at some mini ratings, shall we, for these? The Yamabushi. Tough act to follow with that LE, that limited edition or that launch edition version of the Yamabushi. Was just so cool sitting on that wall. This one, though, is still dynamic, and I definitely need to give it bonus points for the fact that it looks quite dynamic. It's mid-action shot, and I love it when Corvus Belli give us a bit of the sense of the story with the model poses that exist. Bows without strings irk me a little bit, and bows that look like they're from the Shindu giant dynasty. I'm drawing a blank, even though I know some of these. Like, they actually look like they're from the 1600s, and yet we haven't got like compound bows. Like, I do the fact that the Jing Ninja does have a compoundy type looking bow. It bothers me a little bit that this one has like such an old-fashioned one when it is fighting in the modern century, especially as it's tactical. I don't think there's anything tactical about an old school bow at quite the same level. So this one for me, getting a 6 out of 10, gets the bonus points for being dynamic and for actually holding a candle to the previous version that looks so good. But that bow is going to annoy me unless I put a string on it, and then it's still going to annoy me because it's an old school bow. Let's look at the Kyojin killers. Where do they rank on the mini rating scale? Heavy flamethrower version gets a solid 5, which I would need to remind you is average. So it's not that I don't like that, it's just I think it sits mid-range in Corvus Belli's. The DACCW, a little bit lower, at 4.5. Some of the things that do slightly irritate me about these models, or why they don't get really high scores from my personal opinion, is that while they're dynamic, they both have just way too much fabric going on. It looks like they're layering up for winter, like they're going to the North Pole on an expedition, not that they're fighting on a desert terrain. So I think there's a little bit of a mismatch there on the quality of the sculpt, especially as we've got some great stuff coming out from Corvus Belli at the moment. So yeah, that's why they're slightly on the average / slightly below average side. Let's look at the next box that we've got coming out of Corvus Belli. Ooh, noisy. White Banner Expansion Pack Beta for Jing. This box is between 44 and 56 points worth of minis, depending on which loadouts you're taking. With FTO options for 2 different fire teams, I think this is, again, another solid buy if you're collecting Jing. It's a good bundle. And both of those units that I'm going to be talking about that fit into F options, they also play very well solo too. So you've got a huge amount of options with how you're going to play White Banner with these units. So we've got the Yin-Shi with multi-marksman rifle. If you're going to be taking that as is, it's 28 points. But if you're going to proxy, that could be anything from 22 to 30 points. It's got albedo -6, which is a super annoying option, and even more annoying when we look at one of the profiles that sit within there. 4 FTO options within the White Banner team, which makes it nice and versatile if you are taking those fire teams. But there's also a sapper option. Now, if you're unfamiliar with sapper as a rule, it's either a deployment skill, so you do it when you're deploying the unit, or it's a long skill if you want to do it during the game. It goes into foxhole state. Foxhole state means that the unit becomes S3 unless it was bigger beforehand. It has partial cover from all angles, so 360, like nanoscreen, if you're familiar with that, but without the annoying sub-rules that nanoscreen has with it. So basically it gets cover from all angles. You can stick it out in the middle of nowhere and it will still get cover. Likewise, you can stick it on top of a building. You're not going to get additional partial cover mods, so you get a lot more flexibility with where it goes. It gets mimetism -3 and courage for being in the foxhole state. Couple that with a K1 sniper, and it could be a real pain to deal with. And remember, with K1, that turns the target's armor value to 0. So this will shut down a tag, it will shut down a heavy infantry moving forward, because they won't want to risk taking a save, especially stacking that albedo -6 with a mimetism -3. So a way that you might deal with something with mimetism is to throw something with MSV at it to negate the mimetism. Because of albedo, MSV is not going to work against this. So either way, you're going to be taking minuses to hit this thing. There's going to be cover, no matter where you're getting it from. And then if you're doing it with non-MSV, you're going to be seeing that -3 for mimetism. So it doesn't really matter how you approach this sapper unit. It's going to be tricky to dig out, and that is the point of foxhole. Then we've got a couple, it's also got forward deployment +4 inches, and then there's also a mine layer profile with AP mines. So really solid unit there for being just a roadblock. Whether you sit it in sapper, someone's got to walk through it and deal with it, or you do the forward deployment with mine layer and AP mines, and people have to go walk through those. So that's Yin-Shi. Pretty difficult unit for your opponent to be dealing with. A really effective roadblock, even if you're not going to use it aggressively within one of those fire teams. We've got Gudan with light shotgun and heavy flamethrower. That's 11 or 13. There's actually 2 profiles for each of these. One of them is an FTO option, I believe, and then the other is a non-FTO. So that's the difference in those 2, really. Let's go Warhorse, the Gudan. Remembering with Warhorse some rules, and I'm going to do some of these rules reminders while we're in the early stages of M5, and M5 is changing every so often. But apologies if I'm teaching you stuff you already know. So Warhorse, no loss of lieutenant, no retreat, can't be isolated, and the special skill BS attack minus whatever doesn't affect anything with the Warhorse. You're seeing a lot of that BS attack -3 come out on units, ineffective against units with Warhorse because they just ignore that completely. There's FTO options, or there's a camel single use forward deployment +4 inches with the Gudan, and then that can fit into the Zanshi fire team if you are taking the FTO option. Carries the Zanshi keyword too, so if you are making that Zanshi fire team, you could have this contributing towards some of the fire team buffs there. And then the other option is the Gudan with the submachine gun, which can be either the 11 or 12 point option. You actually have a full choice. Also carries the FTO option and the camo version, so very good options there. In terms of the mini rating, that's what I'm going to next. The Yin-Shi, low and aggressive. I quite like that dynamism. It looks purposeful. Love the spikes on the back. Great armor to robe ratio, which is apparently a key way in how I judge minis. I didn't realize until I was doing this mini scoring thing. And just the right amount of tactical rock. Gets a 7.5 out of 10 for me. Gudan, very standard line infantry, which isn't a bad thing. The fluffy warmers in a futuristic suit that is surely capable of heating itself is always something that I find questionable around how Corvus Belli designed some of its minis. But that's just me getting confused with maybe the technology, and maybe it's a style choice and I shouldn't judge them for it. The Jing armor always looks super cool. It doesn't really matter what it's on. The aesthetics that Corvus Belli have for Jing is really on point, I find. 6.5 out of 10 for the Gudan. Big box here. Whoa, big box. We've got the Essentials Jing Action Pack. This thing is epic value. Let's have a look at it. We've got, I'm not going to be doing mini ratings for these because there's too many minis to go through. So this one and my Nomads pack. I'm going to skip that, but then we'll get back to mini ratings a bit later. And then we've got pronunciations that everyone can laugh at me at, and I don't really mind. Zhuyong with boarding shotgun. Zhuyong with combi rifle. So if I've gotten that wrong, I've gotten it really wrong because I've gotten it 3 times. And then we've got the Daoying with multi-sniper rifle. Lu Jiang. I think X's are pronounced slightly differently. So that's not going to be how that's pronounced. Haidao with combi rifle. Zanshi with G. Zanshi Hacker with combi rifle. Hulong with combi rifle. And Zensha. Again, that's probably not how that's pronounced. It's probably like Chen with submachine gun. Cheapest option in this box. So if you're looking at what does this give you, if I am collecting Yujing or if I want to start out with this, how close does it get me to a 300-point standard tournament kind of maximum points you will be taking? Well, you start off with 220. If you're taking the cheapest option of everything in here, that takes you all the way to 291. So you're almost at the 300-point limit that you'd be expecting. Before you've even factored in the fact that most lists will have remotes in them that aren't in here. You'll probably have a tag, like probably Blue Wolf, because that thing's epic. Or you might be having something big in here. So real good starting point if you're looking to take yourself as close to the 300 points as possible and then just add to it. If you play Yujing, are most of these in your core force? What do you take a lot? What's in here that you never actually take and you think is a bit of a waste of space in there? Keen to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please throw them in there. I love hearing from Yujing players. Then we've got the other essentials pack. Nomads. I said it in my January release video, Nomads very close to my heart. We've got the Securitat with HMG, that's 13 to 22 points. The actual one that's in here is 21 points if you're going to take it WYSIWYG. Securitat Hacker with combi rifle, that's 18 points, but again, can proxy for anything in the Securitat range that's between 13 and 22 points. Securitat with boarding shotgun, that's 13 points, as is. Mobile Brigada with multi-rifle is 33 points. Spectre with combi rifle, that is 33 points. Grenza with combi rifle, good unit in there, 28 points. Morlock with chain rifle, love and hate them, 6 points. They're a really good unit. Sin Eater with HMG, that's sitting at 28 points for the HMG version. Mary Problems, probably the best hacker in the game, and that is not an exaggeration. There are 1 or 2 that compete. Actually, weirdly, one of the ones that I would put next to this is in Nomads too, but actually sits within Bakunin, at least how I've played it, and probably one other, at least probably Vanilla. Mary Problems with a submachine gun. Many problems are faced by your enemy when you run her. 27 points. Yeah, she's got both a hacking device with Oblivion +1 burst upgrade, which is enough for it to make the best hackers list, but also comes with a killer hacker device. So it actually has 2 hacking devices in her profile, with Trinity becoming AP, which in this instance would half the BTS save on whatever you're attacking. Now, there aren't a lot of big BTS hackers. Now, I say there aren't a lot. There are some where taking down one of its saves is going to make a difference, but that's just cool. It's got forward deployment 4 inches and its mimetism -6. So if you're unlucky enough to actually have it stuck out and something's going to be shooting at her, yeah, it's not going to be something, ideally it's going to be something that doesn't have MSV, and so you're going to be having that -6 plus cover. So real good set if you're thinking about getting into Nomads. I wish this had come out when I was getting into Nomads. It would have saved me a ton of money and a ton of time. Looking at the points section, the cheapest, we're not quite looking at the same level of points that we're seeing in that Yujing pack. We're seeing the cheapest version here at 183 and the most expensive that we're seeing at 238. As I said, good value in terms of the models and the fact that you're going to be running most of those. In terms of the total points in this box versus the Yujing one, a little bit different there. Next up, but whizzing through some of these, we've got the support pack, which is part of the essentials because doctors, it was also part of Code 1 back when that was a thing, is that these support packs, which have doctors, engineers, and then the support bots, are very essential to most armies. You'd be surprised at how often you're taking them. Let's look at this JSA one. So this is between 34 and 40 points, not a massive swing because we've basically got everything in here that we need. You'd actually be surprised at how often you add doctors and engineers to your list. So it's really good to have this and have the models. And also those support bots are super important because you often do want effectively a doctor or an engineer the other side of the table to be next to some tags or some heavy infantry that you've got. So you'd be surprised at how useful these sets can be. They're not always the most exciting sets that you're buying because they are a support role and they're not a tag that's going to be killing lots of things, but quite important for army building, I've found. The Tokusetsu Butai Doctor with combi rifle, 14-point option here. Cheap Doctor, good option. Then we've got the Tokusetsu Butai Engineer with combi rifle and the 2 Yaoza. Again, the pronunciation is going to be way off, so apologies for that. The Engineer can come with a 14 to 17 point option. There's only 1 point option with the support bot, and that's 3 points. I would actually be taking the deployable turret option on the engineer, because even though turrets have had a bit of a nerf in that they're non-reloadable now, still really good for low points, and that's still putting extra guns on the table, which slows your opponent down. So I'll be quite keen to do that. Let's do some mini ratings. So the Tokusetsu Butai, older model, especially on both of these, and it shows. You can see that their proportions haven't been updated to the same sort of proportions that we're getting at the moment. The newer stuff has meant that this box has maybe aged a bit more than some of the other repacks of older models, at least in my opinion. One of the key things that stands out to me is the oversized gun. That isn't proportionately there. And then also the head size, especially on the, I think it's the engineer that has the helmet. That sticks out to me quite a bit. So not amazing proportions means that for me, these are a 4 out of 10 in terms of how good these sculpts look. Helper bots. One of them's actually okay. The other one, however, looks like it hasn't been updated since N1. And so as an average score, you're looking at about 3.5 out of 10, which is a little bit brutal, but I've got to be honest. Got to be honest with these things. So then when we get to a set that is maybe a bit newer, you can see how far some of them have come. So we're looking at the Pan-Oceania support pack now. Effectively the same that JSA one I've just been talking to is about, in that they're very important. They're quite good for list building. This set is between 35 and 38 points. Very similar to what we've just been saying with the JSA, closer than what we've seen beforehand. Again, core option. I can't remember the last time we played against a Pano person, and they didn't have either a machinist or a trauma doc in their army, which is so surprising because Whip 12, which is what the trauma doc has, is not very good for trying to resuscitate things, which is why we often see Pano doctors kill the things that they're trying to resuscitate. Trauma doc with combi rifles, 14 points in this set, slightly more likely to kill your trooper thanks to that whip roll. The machinist with a combi rifle, we've then got 15 to 18 points, and then there's 2 power bots that are 3 points each. In terms of the sculpts, I actually think the trauma doc, which looks like the oldest out of all of these, is quite Joan-esque. And maybe because there's been so many Joan releases over the course of history, she's modernized slowly, but has also remained quite original. I think it's aged relatively well. It's not the worst female sculpt to actually come out of some of the older-ish Gen CB range. There's some that are quite dated. And then this is also more dynamic than some of the newer doctors. And I'm thinking to the O12 support pack that came out with Code 1. Both the engineer and the doctor there were quite stand-up-y. I'm a support role. I don't actually have much action to be doing. Whereas this one looks like she's rushing to try and heal someone or kill someone. So I'm giving this a 5.5 out of 10. The trauma doc. Then we've got the machinist. Really not that bad. It still holds up really well. In fact, it's slightly too cool for an engineer. I don't know whether that's the paint scheme. No, it's the sculpt. This just looks really good as a set. The tactical metal scrap that he's standing on will keep the tactical rock haters happy. Remember that there are options outside of tactical rocks. Not everything comes with one. This is getting a 6 out of 10 because while it is better and it's good, we've got so many cool minis out there that something that's just standing there looking like it's doing its job isn't going to get to that high end of the spectrum. But the Palbots looks as though they maybe had the tiniest update since the N1, N2 out of print run, but not as bad as the JSA ones. Despite that, these ones have aged very well, especially like the more military orders Crusader mask looking one. That one looks quite cool. So these are going to get a 6 out of 10 because they're not that bad for support bots. Then we're going to look ahead to some March releases. Might even be able to reach some of these. Here we go. So we've got the JSA painting set from Army Painter. I find this interesting as a concept. Why? Because the lore book that got released with N5 had some excellent painting instructions in there. And in fact, I'm still doing a video that is me following those instructions, having bought all of the paints that are in that. All of those paints, interestingly, Vallejo. And then Corvus Belli teams up with Army Painter. And I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity to not have the N5 lore painting tutorials use the Army paints and use these to also prime us towards buying these sets so that we could get all of them. Then on the same thread, we've got a Pano version of that. Beautiful. This, again, interestingly, and I'm going to go into this more with my March video, I find it interesting that these are paint sets for the original box arts and not the new Shindenbutai Kestrel paint sets. Just an observation that I find quite interesting. I wonder why Corvus Belli did that, bearing in mind we're all on the JSA Shindenbutai and the Kestrel hype train. Next, Tinker and Zetbot. I've seen some mixed opinions around the Tinker's profile. When I looked at it, I actually thought it had some quite good uses in how I play O12. And then the Zetbot is, I think off the top of my head, and I need to refresh this and will before my March video, I think that's the remote that can pop out of the Zeta to do stuff. So I'm actually going to have a look at that, but Tinker and Zetbot in the March video that will be coming up soon. Then we've got the AVOT remotes, which are, again, pretty core to my JSA lists, especially one of them, which I'm going to go through in the March video a bit more. Then we've got this is a March/April release. What month are we in? March, April. I don't think it's a May release. But we've got a trifecta of the ISS release set, which is these 3 models together. So I've noticed Warcrow's selling this off already. Others will be too, because it's coming from Corvus Belli. But pre-orders coming out for these. So we've got the ISS, but then also they're coming out as individual releases, it looks like. So you can get the ISS action pack on its own if you want to. You can get the Long Wang on its own if you want to, but then you won't be getting the Dragon Lord because this is the pre-order exclusive mini. HVT, I'm pretty sure it's the HVT. Again, probably need to look at ISS a bit more as to whether this is also playable, because some of the HVTs and things like the Yamabushi is obviously a playable mini. I think Corvus Belli might be going away from doing HVTs as these limited editions and actually playable minis. But, so you have the option of buying these 2 separately, individually, whenever you like, and then you can get them as a bundle, a Adepticon bundle, if you really want to. So that is super cool. There's a couple of other things in here that I've forgotten to put in my little list here. So I've got the Shindenbutai expansion pack Gamma. That's what we're doing. I can see a Hatamoto in there. It looks like another Jizumirai. And then Camo Hacker of some sort. Doesn't look like Kyojins, so I probably need to refresh my memory on what that one is. And then Kestrel expansion pack Gamma. Looking at that, there's any number of things in there. Probably Hectari. At least one of those probably is a Hectari. Then we've got some cool Warcrow stuff coming, which I'm actually going to end on in my video anyway, because we've got some February releases for Warcrow. So I'm going to have some few Warcrow words, but I'm also going to, so much Warcrow. So much Warcrow. Let's do all the Warcrow, because you can probably see the big box. Can you see that just over my shoulder? Big box of Warcrow. And there's so many more boxes of Warcrow. Oh my word. They're literally spilling. So what have we got? We've got the Baklia Farm Scenery Pack. That's coming out. I'm actually quite curious about that. 2 distance short templates, 2 distance long templates, 1 turn counter, 139 tokens and markers, 2 buildings, farmhouse and shed, 4 fences, 2 walls, 4 terrain templates, paper gaming mat. Not knowing what role terrain plays in Warcrow, it looks like something that's probably special terrain, because it's rocks or ponds or F4 terrain templates. So chances are there's like terrain limitations like there are in Infinity. But what do we have? Hegemony Black Legion supports. One of them looks like a little dwarf with some notes. That's looking pretty cool. Then we've got, what's this one? CNN Grove Curtailers. They're kind of like leaf head people. Elves type thing. And then we've got a CNN Grand Captain. Very tree-like, dynamic posing there. Staying on the Sai-Enan, we've got an action pack, which has so many things in it. So many things. And the elves look pretty cool in this, actually. I especially like the smoky paint style that they've done on some of those archers and the leaves. Really cool. Warcrow is actually so hard to try and justify not getting into just because the minis are looking so cool. And then we've got some Northern Tribes Varank supports, which you can see there. So that's actually the March releases. Within February, we've got ones that I spoke about in my January update. Northern Tribes, Ice Archers. These are looking cool. I mentioned blue avatar archery people. You obviously could colour them into a different colour scheme if you thought that was too blue, but that's a really cool set. We've got Hegemony Black Legion Arquebusiers is how I'm going to commit to pronouncing that, having struggled with it in my January video. Arquebusiers. I'm questioning it. guns through shields, flawless. And then we have this big boy, the Yaldabouth card pack. This is pretty much enough to get me into. And it's Warcrow Adventures too. Oh, that's problematic because this thing looks super cool. And Warcrow Adventures is what's sitting right there. And I mentioned in my January video, I loved Warcrow Adventures because it would fill my Gloomhaven gap, which now that I've finished playing that, I don't want to get all the expansion packs. I think Warcrow Adventures is going to be where it's at. So some super cool releases in February. We've got great stuff coming in March. April's got some really cool stuff with the ISS releases. And then that's before we even look at May, where we've got the first of the vehicles with the Red Sky. I think it's Red Eye actually, from Kestrel, which is a beast of a unit, and the model actually stacks up quite well. And then we've got the O12 version of that, whose name escapes me because I haven't played Torchlight or O12 for a couple of months. Thank you so much for watching my video on the February releases. My March release video will be coming out soon, so stay tuned for more videos.